Stand Your Ground law. It's in the news again, and it's going to be in the news a whole lot more. This is Charlie Crimebuster, and this is the Charlie Crimebuster Show, and today we're talking about Stand Your Ground. Well, hello and welcome to another Charlie Crimebuster Crime Talk. This is Charlie Crimebuster with you. We're going to talk today about Stand Your Ground. Yep, it's in the news again, and it's just right down the road from us where we're broadcasting. That's down the road to Clearwater, Florida. That's right. It just happened recently. There was a recent decision not, N-O-T, to charge a man who shot and killed another man in a convenience store parking lot. And why? All because of Florida's Stand Your Ground law. It even prompted protests. Yep, protesters. They gathered at the Circle A store. That's down there in Clearwater, Sunset Point in Clearwater. It was the scene of the shooting, and they were there to express their frustration on how the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office handled the case, because the Sheriff's Office refused to prosecute the man who shot the other because of Stand Your Ground. And it started when Marcus McLaughlin's girlfriend, she drove into the parking lot, and he walked into the Circle A store, and she parked in a handicap space. There was a press conference, and the Pinellas County Sheriff, he mentioned that a regular customer was frustrated when he saw that McLaughlin's girlfriend illegally parked in the handicap spot. The girlfriend and the customer, they started yelling at each other. That was after the customer complained to her about parking there. Another customer saw what was going on. He went inside to tell the manager about the disturbance outside. And while he was in there, of course, McLaughlin, he heard about it, and he walked outside, saw the customer arguing with his girlfriend, and violently shoved the customer to the ground. While on the ground, the man, who feared for his life, shot and hit McLaughlin in the chest. McLaughlin was then taken to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. And after being slammed to the ground, the sheriff said that the customer felt he was going to be further attacked. And so as a result of that, Pinellas County authorities declined to prosecute. And as a result of that, there were protests. So you're going to hear a lot more, I'm sure, about Stand Your Ground. And not only because of that, but also coming up the end of the month, this summer, there's going to be a special out on television. It's called Rest in Power, and it has to do with the George Zimmerman shooting and Trayvon Martin. And they're going to be talking about Stand Your Ground in Florida, I can guarantee you that. And probably Stand Your Ground all across the country. And so you're going to hear a lot more about it. So I thought it would be good on today's broadcast for us to talk about Stand Your Ground, the Stand Your Ground law, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and 5 things you may or may not know about Stand Your Ground. We're going to talk about it right here today on today's program. But first, we always try to use some news you can use, and this news comes all the way from Utah. And a lady by the name of Wanda Brzee, she was convicted for her role, if you remember, in the kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart. And the news is she was denied parole. That's right, the Utah Board of Paroles, they announced on Monday that she would not be given another possible parole hearing until 2023. By that time, she would have served her sentence if she's still alive, because she's 72 years of age now, and she was convicted of conspiracy to commit kidnapping in connection with the 2002 abduction of Elizabeth Smart. Now, her husband, Brian David Mitchell, he was convicted of breaking into the Smart family home and taking then 14-year-old Elizabeth captive for 9 months. Now, she was found, as you recall, with the homeless street preacher walking down a sandy street. And she was one of Mitchell's wives and was raped and just treated horribly. Thank God She's alive, and thank God she's using that experience to help others. We are very supportive of that. But in our news we can use, we always try to give you something that you can use to keep you and your family safe. And I want to comment on this, and the reason why this is brought up on the program is I wanted you to learn something by what happened way back there in 2002. You see, the Smarts had invited this man to their home to do work around the house. They felt sorry for the man. They wanted to give the man a helping hand. So they said, if you come to our home, do some work around the house, we'll pay you some money. We'll help you. We'll support you. And while that's good that people want to support people, it was very bad that they brought this man into their home, around their family, and this man saw this as an opportunity to kidnap this precious, precious little girl, 14 years of age. Now, what the Smarts intended to do, they had good intentions, but unfortunately it was terrible, terrible consequences as a result of good intentions. You may have good intentions, and I appreciate that. You may want to help the homeless, you may want to help the less fortunate, and that's good. That's what America's all about. But there are programs that are in place to do that. And if you want to help, why don't you support those programs or get those people involved in those programs? Because those programs, many of them, are set up to keep people safe, both the people they are helping and people around the people that they are helping. So don't ever bring anybody to your property, to your home, that you haven't vetted, that you don't know who they are. That includes repairmen or people who come to your home for one reason or the other, because that can be very, very dangerous. So the news you can use says, be careful, vet people before you have them around your home, around your family. If you want to help people, but there's a safe way to do it. Make sure you know the safe way to help other people. All right, we're going to talk about stand your ground law in just a moment, but first, the crazy crook story of the week. Crazy crook story of the week. Yes, of course. Of course, it happened in Florida, only in Florida. Vero Beach, Florida. There was a Florida man. He was stopped for drunk driving, but he denies it. So, nope, I wasn't drinking while driving. He claimed that he only drank while he was stopped at traffic signals and stop signs. That's right. Stevens of Vero Beach. He was approached on June the 27th by a police officer. This was after some woman called and said that this guy was hitting their bumper numerous times while she was in the McDonald's drive-thru. And the smoking gun gives us this information. It says that Stevens smelled of alcohol, slurring his words. That's according to the officer. And, yep, believe it or not, a bottle of Jim Beam was sitting in the passenger seat right next to Stevens. He admitted he'd been drinking, yeah, but he said, nope, wasn't drinking while driving. He said he explained that he was not drinking while the car was moving, and he only was drinking when he stopped for stop signs and traffic signals. The officer put it in his report. Well, that's funny, isn't it? Yeah, like another crazy crook from Florida who said, nope, I only drink when I was stopped at stop signs or traffic lights. Well, that's funny, but it's not funny what happens when drunk drivers strike innocent people, and innocent people are killed all the time by drunk drivers. I remember while I was in the Law Enforcement Academy in Donaldson, Tennessee, the Tennessee Law Enforcement Academy. I remember hearing a story. It's probably been told in every academy across the country. Probably all kinds of police training have told the same story over and over again. And where it happened, I have no idea. I do believe it really happened, but I don't know where or when. But I do know it really had an impact upon me. The story was told of a officer who was on his way home one night from the end of his tour of duty when he ran upon a drunk driver. And he was, of course, in his police car. And he was tired. He had had a very, very, very long shift, and he just decided to let it go, to let it pass. Even though he suspected the man was driving drunk, he was behind the man, followed him. He decided, well, I don't have time, because if I stop, it's going to take a couple of hours, and I'm already tired, and I'm going to have to process it, going to have to arrest him, give the sobriety checkpoints test. I'm going to have to, wait for somebody to come and get his car to tow it. I'm going to have to make sure he gets transported, blah, blah, blah. I just don't have the time to do that. So he went home. Only when he went home, he found that his family had left to go to the store. And the rest of the story you probably already guessed. They were involved in an automobile accident, and in that accident they were hurt. They were hit by a drunk driver. The very same drunk driver that this officer did not have the time or take the time to process. Boy, you talk about leaving an impact upon officers that are learning in academy. That left an impact. And I remember many a time on my way home after the end of a tour of duty, I would run across someone who I suspected of drunk driving. and I did take the time to process them, and I was late getting home, and each time that happened, I always thought back to that story. It is funny when you think about this man who said, no, I wasn't drinking and driving. Nope, I only drank when I stopped at the stop sign or stopped at a traffic light. That's funny, but it's not funny what happens when drunk drivers kill others. So keep that in mind. Please do not drive while intoxicated. Do not drive while you have been drinking. And do not allow others to do so also. And that's more news that you can use, even from the crazy crook story. And as I said, we try to share all of our stories. We try to share something that will keep you and your family safe, because that's important to us at Charlie Crime Buster. And that brings us to the next thing we share. We always try to share a crazy crook story, and we share something about cybercrime. Cybercrime today, it comes from Facebook, believe it or not. I bet you do believe that, don't you? Well, this was a 17-year-old. A young lady suspected of murdering a man and shooting him twice in the head, and then she burned down his house with his body inside. But then she took the time to brag about it, the whole thing, on social media. And the victim's body was found, burned beyond recognition. This happened in Wisconsin. Now, this teenager who decided to brag about this young lady who decided to brag about this on Facebook, she got caught and she deserved it. But there are some people who put things on Facebook and they become victims of cybercrime, and they do not deserve it. They do not deserve it. So keep in mind that anytime you put something on social media, you are becoming vulnerable to hackers and cybercrime. So let me share with you five quick things about staying safe online that has been put out on the internet. Actually, even Facebook shared these 5 things, and I want to share them with you real quick before we get into stand your ground law. Number 1, never share. Never share your password. Just don't share your password. Number 2, think before you post. What are you revealing in that post? And are you sure that the right people are seeing what you post? And what if the wrong people see what you post? Can they use that to cause you or your family to become victims to crime? So think before you post. Number 3, adjust your privacy settings. Review them often. Adjust privacy settings. Review them often. And number 4, only accept friend requests from people you know personally. Remember, everybody you bring into your friendship circle, they're going to see things from you. And make sure you know them personally, you trust them. Particularly if you're sharing personal things. And last but not least, report things that look suspicious. If you find something looking suspicious, report it. If you see it, say something. Very good news for anybody to use in this life. Alright, now it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty, as we say. We're talking about the stand your ground law. What does it mean? What does it really mean? Well, here's a simple explanation of stand your ground. A person is justified in using or threatening to use deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself. Now let me share that again. You're justified in using or threatening to use deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another. Or, now here's another part of it, also to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. Please notice I said forcible felony. It doesn't mean you see somebody who's conducting or committing a felony that you have the right to go up and use deadly force. You do not. It's forcible. If this person using deadly force is putting somebody else's life in grave danger or your life in grave danger, forcible felony. Now, a person who uses or threatens to use deadly force in accordance to this subsection does not have a duty, listen to this, does not have a duty to retreat and has the right to stand his or her ground. Do not have a duty to retreat, and you have the right to stand his or her ground. That's a pretty simple explanation, but it's right on target for what stand your ground means. The stand your ground law means, especially here in Florida. Now, there are 5 things you may not know about stand your ground. First of all, stand your ground is different. It's different from the castle doctrine. You see, the castle doctrine, it's a common law doctrine. It basically states that people have the duty, they have no duty to retreat in their home or their castle, and may use reasonable force, including deadly force, to defend their property, person, or another. Now, outside of the abode, however, under the castle doctrine, a person has the duty to retreat if possible. Retreat, now, please listen to those two words, if possible. To retreat if possible before using deadly force. Now, the castle doctrine and stand your ground laws are acceptable defenses for people who have been charged with criminal homicide. There are some states who do not have stand your ground, but they do have the castle doctrine. And some states, the castle doctrine includes automobiles in some states. Now, the stand your ground law, which is called line in the sand or no duty to retreat, is a justification in a criminal case, again, where the defendant can stand their ground and use force without retreating in order to protect and defend themselves or others against threats or perceived threats. An example is where there is no duty to retreat from any place where they have a lawful right to be, and they may use any level of force if they reasonably believe the threat rises to the level of being imminent or immediate threat or to seriously bodily harm or death, you see. So there is a difference between the castle doctrine and stand your ground. The second thing you may or may not know about stand your ground is that stand your ground is not a national common law. Don't think that it actually includes everybody everywhere in the country. It does not. Florida was the very first state to actually pass a stand your ground law. There are others who have adopted stand your ground laws, and they're Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming at this point do have stand your ground laws. Now, there are others who've adopted it in practice, through laws, this sort of thing, and there are others who adopted stand your ground but limit it only to when a person is within their vehicle, and those are North Dakota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So all of this simply means this: stand your ground law does not include everybody everywhere. You need to check what your own state law is, and if you're traveling to another state, you probably ought to check out what that law is, because there are some laws, there are some states that will allow you to carry your own state issued use your own state issued permit in their state, but they may not have stand your ground laws. So you need to know, if you live in a state, you need to know what that state law is. If you're traveling to a state, it'd be a great thing for you to check out what the law is there, so you know exactly what your rights are when you go to another state. So number one, stand your ground is different from the castle. Number two, it's not a common law all over the country, so you need to check it carefully. Number three, contrary to what you may have heard, stats are proving that stand your ground law has not shown racial disparity. You see, in 2012, basically in response to the Trayvon Martin case, the Tampa Bay Times down in Tampa, they compiled a report on the application of stand your ground. They even created a database of cases where defendants sought to invoke the law. Now, their report, get this, their report found no racial disparity in Florida cases in the way in which defendants claiming self-defense under the law were treated, with white subjects being charged and convicted at the same rate as black subjects. In other words, no difference. And the results of mixed race cases were similar for both white victims and black attackers, and black victims and white attackers. So I'm sure that there's going to be disagreement with that Tampa study, but nonetheless, that's what the study calls. So number four, this is important because a lot of people just don't get this. I still see articles and hear people talking about Trayvon Martin and stand your ground. The stand your ground law was not used in defense of George Zimmerman. I don't know why people don't realize that. You see, the Florida law, passed in 2006, says when people who feel threatened don't have to retreat from danger no matter where they are. It did become a huge point of contention particularly after Zimmerman's arrest. His supporters were saying that the incident demonstrated the precise need of the law, and the critics said, well, it encourages a Wild West or a mentality. But now Zimmerman's lawyers, they just said it doesn't apply to the case. In this particular case, George did not have the ability to retreat because he was on the ground with Trayvon Martin mounting him, striking blows. Therefore, the stand your ground benefit given by the statute simply does not apply to the facts of George's case. It's traditional self-defense, and that's exactly what Zimmerman's attorneys argued on their case, self-defense. And the reason, again, that he had no way to escape, so he didn't need the benefit of stand your ground, because the stand your ground says that you don't have to escape, but he had no way to escape in the first place. Now, his attorneys, they looked at it a little different. Benjamin Crump, he basically said that the decision to change the hearing of trial was because of the fact that they didn't want to put George Zimmerman on the stand. That's what Crump said in a press release, and to preclude the public and the potential jury pool from previewing the many inconsistencies in George Zimmerman's story. So he said the reason why they didn't use stand your ground because they didn't want to put him on the case. But that's really not what the attorneys say. The attorneys say, and this is exactly what the attorneys say, and I've got the document right here. The Florida law that was passed said, this is what exactly the attorney said. They said he did not have the ability to retreat because he was on the ground, and George Zimmerman didn't have the opportunity to escape, so no use for stand your ground there. So many people don't know that, but that's exactly what happened in that situation there. Now, there's something else about stand your ground that you need to know. Of course, we need to know the fact that as we review here today, that the Castle Doctrine is different, and we also need to know that other countries also have stand your ground law. Did you know that? Some people don't know that. Actually, the common law jurisdiction in England and Wales has a stand your ground law, rooted in common law defense, using reasonable force in self-defense. You see, at English common law, there is no duty to retreat before a person may use reasonable force against an attacker, nor the need for a person to wait to be attacked before defending themselves. That's in English law. And people say, well, in England they've got stricter laws, but they do have a stand your ground or something very similar to it that's rooted in English law. All right, 5 things there that you may not know about stand your ground. I guarantee you're going to hear a whole lot more about it in the coming days, particularly when this television program is aired. There's going to be a whole lot of people calling for stand your ground law to be abolished. But those of us who believe in the right to bear arms, we also believe we have the right to stand our ground. And I think that that's something that we all need to fight for, that we all need to make sure that the people that we elect to office protect our Second Amendment rights, and we need to be involved. And if you believe very much in your right to bear arms, and if you believe very much in your right to stand your grounds, shame on you if you do not stay politically activated and make sure that the people that you are electing to office will embrace the Second Amendment and embrace your right to bear arms. Just read, just before going on air today, I read of a young lady in her house. Her boyfriend, who was violent, broke into her house, and this young lady was able to defend herself because she had a weapon, and she used that weapon to defend herself. We hear every day of situations in domestic violence where people are unable to defend themselves. So if I had a daughter or I had somebody in my life who was in danger of domestic violence, one of the best things I could do would be to teach them to defend themselves. And thank God the law now allows us not only to defend ourselves in our homes or our castles, but it allows us to defend ourselves in the places that we have the right to be. Well, this is Charlie Crimebuster, and this has been a Charlie Crimebuster special. Let me encourage you to go to our website, charliecrimebuster.com, charliecrimebuster.com. On that site, you'll see one particular area where it says resources, and we have a whole list of apps that you can use to keep you and your family safe. I hope you'll take time to avail yourself to that. Until next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you to stay safe, for the life you save may be your very own.